This is Radar from On the Radar Entertainment Blog, coming with you with edition number 3 on movie reviews and observation of movies that came out on DVD in 2019. So the first movie that I watched was a movie called Inside Man Most Wanted. It was like a bank heist movie. You had FBI, you had cops, detective, you had SWAT. It's all different things. The confusing thing about this movie is Rhea Shelburne from Franklin and Bash and from Better Call Saul. She plays an FBI agent who's teaching people, and her and her friend go out to it because the head of the FBI and the deputy, either mayor or the head of the district attorney office, they'll tell her you got to go deal with this bank robbery. Then there's this whole neo-Nazi thing with diamonds and a child of the guy who was killed, and this woman running the crew, and there's different people on it, and they think it's a copycat and all these other things. But the problem is, it's very highfalutin, and to see who's really in charge of the bank heist, who's working together, what's going on, this hotshot detective who, calms people down and things like that. So it was overall interesting movie to watch because it's a bank robbery with plot twist and reveals and all these things where you're not sure what's happening in the movie. But it's pretty boring to start the movie, and then eventually it gets better. But because it's so confusing and all over the place, it's a thumbs down, because at the end of the day, you're confused. You don't know what's going on. So Inside Man Most Wanted is subpar. Then I watched Detective Pikachu, which brings back your childhood if you're someone from the 90s, 2000s, where they took Pokemon and they made it live action. Yes, they remade 2 Ash Ketchum episodes from the original, show, and they made them more expanded into a TV movie length, and they decided to include every Pokemon from every generation of Pokemon in his story, and there's no sidekicks of his and stuff. So this is where you get an opportunity where it's a Pokemon live action movie, and there's Pikachu in it, and he could talk to Pikachu in the movie. The story plot is there's his a strange father who's a detective who supposedly died under mysterious circumstances, and the movie seems like it's trying to mix America with Japan or China, because there's Japanese or Chinese characters and some of the infrastructure looks like it, but then it's not. That's a little bit confusing. But Ken Watanabe plays the partner of the person, and Bill Nighy plays the bad guy in the movie, and Ryan Reynolds voices Pikachu. So you got some big time names in here. So overall, it was good to see these Pokemon come to live action. But if you're somebody like me who's in his late 20s now, there are certain generations of Pokemon that I do not know who they are and what they are, and they thought it's a very good idea to include some of these Pokemon that would confuse the average person who either stop at their 150 or more to see, or, when you were a kid, you played the Game Boy Color game of, Gold and, Silver Crystal, whatever, those games. And then you had the Game Boy Advance games, which were Ruby, Sapphire, and then Emerald. Those series, and even you watched those. But after, those, when they switched over to the platform of, the Nintendo DS, a lot of kids who grew up playing Game Boy Color and Game Boy and a Game Boy Advance and SP, and then they're just they got older enough that where they're not playing it. So they're not playing the game, they're not watching the show or collecting the cards when they get to a certain point. So that's confusing. They want to make it a story about a boy looking for what happened to his estranged father, and that he has to work with his father's Pokemon partner, and he doesn't want a Pokemon partner and whatnot, and he's got to save the world with a female friend of his and Pokemon and stuff like that. And it's all about detective work. So it is pretty much age appropriate with fighting scenes in the movie, so kids can watch it, and it's live action. So overall, it's a great idea to bring Pokemon back to life in a live action form. The story was a little bit thin about he's got to find his father who hasn't seen, Mewtwo's in it, and all these things. So somewhat of the story plot is a little bit flimsy of why they made this movie and who's in it and what's the story. Because it's not a live action movie about Ash Ketchum going on his adventure. It's just the real world. We all want it to be Digimon is real, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a card game, and Beyblades is a game, those, foreign shows that they made for kids and stuff. Pokemon is the thing that people always wanted to be real, because you would be I want to live in a world where Pokemon are walking around and you can interact with them. And you don't have to catch them and train, but they have a purpose and things like that. And the movie isn't that long, being an hour and 44 minutes, that it doesn't actually drag on. So we all got to see live action of Pokemon in a movie, and that was great. but they make it where it's like it's the real world. They got these people that have problems and they're mixing it with Pokemon. That's fine. So overall, it's a movie you should watch because it's got laughs. It's got a mystery involved. It was pretty good. And I just like Ryan Reynolds too, so it's a pretty good movie. The only thing that doesn't make sense is Ryan Reynolds in the movie having a black kid. But either way, it's just, the thing. The next movie I watched was a movie that some people consider like a action, adventure, drama, horror film, and things like that, called Body of Brighton Rock, where this young girl after school, they volunteer and they work, for, like as a sheriff's county thing, and they have like the forest preserves or county parks, and she agrees to go out and do something because everybody says she can't. And then she gets stuck and gets lost, has to battle a bear, finds a dead body, all these things like that, and she's all stuck there and she has to spend the night. And because it's only like an hour and 20-something minutes, it's a very short film, so even if it starts to drag a bit, it doesn't drag that long, and there's a lot of confusing things that happen because it's a combination of action, adventure, horror, and drama. So overall, it's like, it's thumbs down. It wasn't that scary of it to be horror. It was a little bit boring of a movie. So, due to its shortness, it's the only reason that it's not a bad movie to watch, because you can get through it. The next movie I watched was Escape Plan Extractor. The first Escape Plan with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger was a very, very good movie. 50 Cent is in the movie, and they have all these people. Second movie was about an Asian man who may have had a connection to them, but he was put into a prison by accident, and he couldn't get out. And he was barely in the movie. Sylvester Stallone and David Bautista, they were barely in that movie. This movie, David Bautista's in the movie because they made up for the fact that he wasn't, and this one was a little personal. Somebody kidnaps Sylvester Stallone's new girlfriend. It happens to be their former partner's son. He also captured an Asian woman after this business person, shady businessman from Asia, and her bodyguard and her ex-boyfriend also come in there. They add these two story plots in order for you to have John. Oh, it's not just they took his girl. They threw in this whole other, stockbroker market of Asian man and his kid being taken, and part of his company people being taken, and having these other people in the thing. It had a great fighting scene, lots of action, and it also was like an hour and like 20-something minutes. So it's a very short movie, and it kind of ends abruptly, and you're like, is there more? Is there not more? So Escape Plan The Extractors, number 3 of this franchise, is better than the second movie, but it's not amazing. They should have left it alone after the first one. The next movie I watched was the movie Mono. It's a film basically in Spanish, and the most famous person in the movie is Moises Arias from Hannah Montana. It's these young, children who are soldiers, and they're guarding a woman a doctor who's doing research. They're on this desert island and all these things. They really don't speak English that well. And then over the night, the movie gets stupid. It's a lot of non-talking in the movie. A lot of unneeded scenes, confusing. The whole point of the doctor being the movie, the character, and the fact that it was like an hour and 40-something minutes, it did drag on, so it felt like it was 2 hours. The reason why the movie was bad is not because it's a foreign movie, because there was some English speaking. It was just very flawed and put together, and it just was too much going on in the background and things. It just didn't make sense, the movie. It wasn't really a fully put together movie. It's just random. Kids are soldiers, they're watching somebody all whoop-de-doo. And the last movie I watched this past couple of weeks was Penguin Highway. I watched the movie Penguin Highway, and it's based off like an anime, a book and stuff like that. And this kid who's in 4th grade who's a genius, wondering why there's penguins in a town where there's no penguins. It leads to the smart girl and his dumb friend figuring it out, then meeting a woman who's not a woman. And there's this water thing, and there's all these natural disasters. And it's really like a fun adventure where he goes and he figures out the mystery behind it all. And it's a children's movie, so it's appropriate. It's not, it's got cute penguins in there. So it's an adventure anime movie with a smart kid and his friends looking to save the day. So it's a very good movie. You should watch it. So overall, Penguin Highway, good children's movie, appropriate, watch it. Monos, not worth the time, and just all over the place. Escape Plan Extractors was better than the second one, but they should have stopped after the first one. Body of Brighton Rock did not know what genre it was, and even though it was short, it was just Detective Pikachu was probably the best movie that I saw because it was entertainment. You had entertainment. You actually had fun. And Inside Man Most Wanted was way too confusing, but it was overall a good movie after a while watching it. So thanks for tuning in to episode number 3 of Movie Observation and Reviews for On the Radar Entertainment on Radar. See you guys next time.